not easy to get to church. Tommy Reed's in the back. He worked to get to church today. Good to see Tommy this morning. And it's just good that everybody is here today, and the children are going to be dismissed to the children's church. Let's see. This is this week's sermon. This is last week's sermon. All right, is school getting ready to start? Does anybody know? When does school start? How many days away is that? 10 days. Everybody got their school supplies? Is everybody ready to go? I thought I would start with a little school this morning. According to Matthew's gospel class, after Jesus was crucified, he appeared to his disciples. In what city did he appear to his disciples after he was crucified? After Jesus was crucified, in what city did he appear to his disciples immediately? Jerusalem. Mother gets it right. Yes. In Jerusalem. Okay, that's kind of a trick question because, that's where they were and Jesus appeared to them. But he appeared to them and he told them to go somewhere. Does anybody know where he told them to go? He told them to go somewhere. Told to go somewhere. Where was it? Not Jerusalem. You will go to Galilee. There we go, Clara. This is fun being a teacher. You just stand in front of the class and do this all day long. Is that right? That's all you do? Okay, so he told them to go to Galilee, but not just to Galilee. Because it says that they went to Galilee to a fill in the blank that they had been guided to. There was a certain place in Galilee that they were guided to go, and it was Amy? A mount. Go to a certain mountain in Galilee. Now, when they got to the mountain in Galilee, Jesus appears to them, and he gives them instructions. He says, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you. So Jesus had the idea that there were going to be disciples who would follow him, who would know his teachings. And as a matter of fact, Christians they weren't first called Christians, they were called followers of the way. Followers of the way, okay? Later they were called Christians. That was kind of a nickname that they were given. A Christian is essentially a little Christ. It's a little follower of Jesus who is endeavoring to grow up to be like Jesus. So that's what a Christian is. So the idea was they were going to know this teaching. But where did Jesus first start giving his teaching? Where did he first summarize his teaching? In where? Galilee, on a mount. So, if you look at Matthew's gospel, it's sort of like a circle, because Jesus starts at the Sermon on the Mount and he starts teaching. And he gives that teaching, and then it continues on, but then ultimately he comes right back around after his crucifixion, his resurrection, right back to that mountain. And he says, now, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them. So I think that's an interesting, it doesn't say whether it's the same mountain or not. In my mind, I want it to be the same exact place. But there's something about that when Jesus started teaching, he knew where he was going. Now, the clearest evidence of preparation is brevity. When you really know what you're talking about, you can express it in very few words. Simplicity. And if you look at the Beatitudes, there's 8 sayings that are there. And if you look at those sayings, you can pretty much, everything else is going to come out of those 8 sayings. It's all sort of packed in to those 8 sayings. And they're very counterintuitive. and they're very deep, and they're very hard to take in. They all start with blessing, but it's a different kind of blessedness than we're used to. My ship came in, I got a raise at work. Wow, I'm blessed. I was surprised somebody came up to me and gave me a real nice compliment. Wow, man, it was just a great day, and I am so happy. I'm really blessed. Well, that's not the kind of blessed that Jesus was talking about. Blessed more meant ready. You're ready. You have willingness. You are open. You're looking for something better because you're in a situation in which you're feeling something you need something, and you're blessed if you realize that because you have willingness. Because did you know that if somebody doesn't want to do something, it matters not how much instruction you put in front of them. You can put a whole encyclopedia in front of somebody, but if they don't feel the need to learn something, guess what they're not going to do? Read it. They're not going to look into it. So Jesus said, blessed are you if you're in the kind of situation that engenders willingness, because that's going to lead to seeking and open. And it just turns out that the more broken we are, the more willing we are. The more that we think we have it all together, the less that we need anything. We think we've got it all. We don't really need much. And so Jesus talked a lot about being blessed when he began his teaching of his disciples. Let's go ahead and turn now to the 5th chapter of Matthew, and we're going to today we're getting to the 6th of the Beatitudes. There's 8 of them, and we're at Matthew 5, verse 8 today. Matthew 5, 8. Let's just go through and remember them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will. Blessed are the meek, for they will. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be mercy. And blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now, the interesting thing about that is that, remember the context. Jesus is teaching this to Jewish people. And for a couple of thousand years, these Jewish people have been under the impression that they are God's chosen people. And that God brought them into existence through Abraham, and then Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and then we moved into Moses, and then we get into the Judges, and then we get into the Kings, King David, King Solomon, then we get into all of the prophets, and then we've had now hundreds of years of study on all of that and we've got the Pharisees teaching and the teaching of the Sadducees. Don't you think we know God by now? Don't you think we're seeing God by now? And yet Jesus said to the people of his day, you are not seeing God. You have lost sight of who God is. What happened was, in the beginning, there was sort of original purity of their being able to see who God was. But as time went on, traditions developed, and camps of interpretation developed, and arguments developed, and traditions and all kinds of things got going, and that finally clouded everything that they, in the midst of all of their good intentions, all of their traditions, all the things like that, they had stopped seeing who God was. And Jesus diagnosed their problem as one of purity in heart. He said that they had lost purity of heart so that they could no longer see who God is. Now, if you look at that word, pure, in the Greek, that word is katharoi. And there's some English words that come from that word. Anybody think of it? What are words that start with C-A-T-H? cathartic. I think there's a medical term that starts with that. Catheter. But what that does is having to do releasing impurity. If something has gone through a cathartic experience, it's had everything that's not supposed to be there out of it. It's about releasing all impurity. So a cathartic heart or a pure heart is a heart that's released all impurity from it. It is pure. Now, the thing about having the blessed heart, of the blessings of a pure heart, is that it makes you able to see. Now, Jesus would say later on in his teachings, and once you look at the Sermon on the Mount as a preview to other teachings, you can begin to see this. But later on, Jesus would teach, see if you can put this together. Remember this, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Later on, Jesus will say about his own people, for this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes and hear with their ears. The problem was the calloused heart. And another time, Jesus was talking to his disciples, and this is in Mark's Gospel. It says, the disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for one loaf they had with them in the boat. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed this with one another and said, is it because we have no bread? Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see, and ears but fail to hear? So, hardness of heart was preventing them from seeing God. Now, Jesus came to reveal a God who was far more merciful than they had understanding in their minds. And so Jesus came to show them a merciful picture of God, but because of their hardened hearts, they couldn't see the merciful picture of God that he was showing them. It was only the people who had merciful hearts who could see the merciful God. So no matter how many different parables Jesus told them, if their hearts were hard, they couldn't see it. So Jesus comes to reveal a God who is pure in heart, and only the pure in heart can see. Now, there's some good news here. If it's only the pure in heart who can see God, then it must be that God is pure in heart. The idea is that light can only see light. Is that good news that God is pure in heart? So Jesus is God in the flesh, and notice how Jesus looks at people. Jesus looks at people with purity of heart, and when he sees them, he loves them. Now Amy talked about, imagine Jesus looking at you. Did you do that? Did you try to do that exercise in your mind? Isn't it kind of hard to imagine Jesus looking at you in a loving and compassionate way? I mean, the first image that kind of comes to a lot of people's minds is, you're going to meet Jesus today. And what's the look going to be on Jesus' face? I've told this story before about the junior high school students I did the retreat for. I asked them how many would want to spend the day with Jesus, and remember what their answer was? I know I've told this story before. Bob? You don't remember it? Okay, Bob. So, there's about 70 junior high and high school kids. It was a retreat. And I asked them, how many of you would want to spend the day with Jesus, and how many of them raise their hands? None of them. Why would I want to spend the day with Jesus? He knows what I'm thinking. I mean, I can hide this from other people, but Jesus knows who I really am. He'd be so disappointed in me. I wouldn't want. But somebody who is pure, they're not seeing Jesus. But when somebody sort of gets it, when they become pure in heart, and then they begin to see who God is, that God really is love, once that happens, once somebody truly sees it, then that really ignites spiritual growth. So, if we want to be more excited, I guess, about God, one of the ways that we can do that is to try to see God more clearly. And I will just say, personally, that the most exciting thing about me, about my spiritual growth over the years, has been a greater ability to see the pure heart of God. And I think I've seen it. I think I have seen the pure heart of God. And it is the most beautiful thing that there is. And I think Jesus came to reveal the pure heart of God to each one of us. And it's just devastating to realize how much we are loved, how much grace has been shown to us. And then to get that, and then to realize that we are to live that way towards every other person, that we are to, that when we see the face of God, that we are to show that same face to every other person, and to love in that way, with that same type of grace and purity and love. So when you see it, then you want to share it. Have you ever been around somebody that's just super pure of heart? It's just like they just radiate with God's love. And I think what's happening there is it's not so much that it's coming out of them, it's almost like it's reflecting. It's almost like they're sharing with you what they're seeing. And in their face, you see the love of God. Have you ever had an experience like that, just being around a real pure-hearted person one time? One time, somebody asked Jesus, "Show us the Father." And you remember what Jesus said to him? "How long have I been with you, and you still can't see him? That if you have seen me, you have seen the Father." So, what if we started thinking about purity of heart as a way of seeing? Now, let's talk about seeing God. One of the easiest places to see God is in the beauty of creation. In the Ozarks where we live, it is super easy to see God in the beauty of creation. Amen? Amen? Has anybody ever lived somewhere that's not beautiful like this?
Yes.
Call it out.
Little Rock.
Okay. Little Rock. And it's just hard to see, but sometimes with the stuff that people make, the buildings and the bridges and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of blocks out the beauty of creation. I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. And that just, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you didn't see creation, you just walked on top of it. It was flat. You just went there were some trees, but basically you just saw what people built. Because what people built was the tallest thing, the most interesting things were the stuff that people were doing. But here in the Ozarks, man, you just see it all around you. Can you see, what about like maybe your mother's face, your dad's face? You've got parents that are living. Or if somebody that really, really, really loves you, can you see and feel can you see God in the way that you're being loved? I don't think that's too hard to see. Here's a harder one. Can you see God in yourself? That's a little harder one, to see God peeking through your own self, and to realize that you've got a little bit of God inside of you that is being expressed. What about this? Can you see God in your enemy, or the person who has said something mean to you? Can you see God in them? That gets harder, doesn't it? All right. Can you see God in the midst of a very difficult circumstance? Can you see God in the midst of suffering? That's even harder. But I get the idea that one of the things that's great about growing spiritually and growing in purity of heart is that once you get to a certain point, you can start to see God everywhere. The question isn't if you can see God. The question becomes, how can you not see God? And then you live in a God-based world, and you see the beauty in each person, even in your enemy, even in the one who is crucifying you, even in the one who is nailing you to the cross. You see the beauty of that person, and you're able to say a prayer for them. So Jesus gives us this beatitude. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, as we come today, we're praying for some willingness, some desire to see you in the heart of your beauty and goodness and grace and mercy in even a more powerful way. Give us that cathartic heart that sees you in all of creation. Help us to see the God-made world. Help us to see your presence in all who are around us, even in ourselves. Help us to see our worth. Heavenly Father, we want to follow Jesus. We want to be Christians, little Christs, little followers who are continuing to grow. And we are so grateful for the unbelievable, overflowing grace and mercy that he shows to us in the way that he sees us. Help us to see who he truly is as well. And now we remember together the prayer that Jesus taught. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread,
And forgive
and
us
our
our sins,
sins,
as we forgive those who
sin
sin
against us.
And
And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
Amen.
Amen. We'll take a little moment and just talk about gratefulness. It's hard to be continually grateful. Heard somebody say the other day that the reason that they said grace was gratefulness. That it was just to pause, to thank God for the food that they had, to remember that there were those who do not eat, and to just be grateful. I'm grateful for this church. Grateful for the facility that we have here. Has anybody ever gone to a church that had a really poor facility? It was kind of falling apart. It was dirty and all that kind of stuff. I've kind of struggled through church situations. This is a beautiful facility that we have here, so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that when somebody comes to join this church, all we ask them is, do you believe in God? Do you want to follow Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Then they don't have to worry that then I'll say to them, well, I'll tell you what I want to do. I'm going to take your name, I'm going to take it to the next board meeting, and I'm going to present your name and see if you get voted into the church. No, I can just receive you right there. I don't have to say to somebody, well, I'm glad that you'd like to join, but before you can join, we have a class that you need to take, and we need to teach you all of our answers to the Bible questions, and you have to agree with all of those answers before you become a member of the church. No? Somebody wants to join the church, I just ask them, do you believe in God? Do you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Then I can receive them right at that moment. And then I can say, are you baptized to your satisfaction? Because at this church, we recognize and honor the baptisms of all other churches. And if they're satisfied with their baptism, I can just welcome them right into the church. If they haven't been baptized, we can get them baptized.
Amen.
I'm grateful that we can be encouraged to receive grace, but to also be challenged to grow spiritually. I hope you felt that today. You feel a little bit of grace? Did you feel a little bit of desire to grow? I think we all want to feel that. I'm grateful that we get to have communion every Sunday, and I think that's a very important part of this church. I'm grateful that men and women can serve together equally in this church. And that's a really important thing for me. It's hard for me to go to a church. It'd be hard for me to think about going to the church where only men could lead and only men could speak. Can you imagine such a thing? It's hard for me to imagine that. So that's really important for me. It's important to me that here we have no creed but Christ and everybody's welcome. So in some places, there's real elaborate and real long doctrinal statements that people have to sign on to just before they can just start to simply follow Jesus. But here, if you just want to simply follow Jesus, you can. And then you can have the ability to, over the course of a lifetime, begin to understand how you interpret the Bible and the various ways you understand doctrines and things. But right now, we don't overcomplicate it. You can just start following Jesus here. So, I am grateful for all of those things. I am really proud of this church. I am proud to be a part of this church. I'm proud for the way this church shows grace and mercy, and the way it receives people, and the way that it struggles to make everybody feel welcome, and that they're important, and that we want them to serve and join together. I am super proud of this church and who we are together.
Amen.
If you'd like to be a member of the church, we're going to have, after the service, after we get to the end part of the service, just come and visit with me, and I can tell you more about membership, and I can receive you, and then we'll introduce you. But right now, what we're going to do is move to the communion table, invite our elder to come forward and send the mail. Let's go ahead and